Swan Song by Chuck Palahniuk. One day, my dog eats some garbage wrapped in aluminum foil and has to get $1,000 worth of x-rays. The yard behind my apartment building is full of garbage and broken glass. Where people park their cars, puddles of antifreeze wait to poison any dog or cat. Even with a bald head, the veterinarian looks like some old best friend, like a kid I grew up with, a smile I saw every day of my childhood, the dimple in his chin and every freckle on his nose. I know them all. The gap between his two front teeth, I know how he could use it to whistle. Here and now, he's giving my dog an injection, standing at a silvery steel table in a cold, white tile room. Holding the dog by the skin of its neck, he says something about heartworm. In the phone book, when I found him, I was blind with crying, afraid my dog might die. Still, there was his listing. Kenneth Wilcox, DVM. A name I loved, somehow. For some reason. My savior. Now, pulling back each of the dog's ears and looking inside, he says something about distemper. Embroidered on the chest pocket of his white coat, it says Dr. Ken. Even the sound of his voice echoes from a long time back. I've heard him sing Happy Birthday, shouting, "Strike one!" at baseball games. This is him, some old friend of mine, but too tall. The skin of his eyelids baggy dark and hanging down. Too fleshy under his chin. His teeth look a little yellow, and his eyes aren't as bright blue as they should be. He says, "She looks good." I say, "Who does?" "Your dog?" he says. Still looking at him, his bald head and blue eyes, I ask, "Where'd you go to school?" He says some college out of California, someplace I never heard of. He was little when I was little, and somehow we grew up together. He had a dog named Skip and walked around barefoot all summer, always going fishing or building a treehouse. Looking at him, I can picture one cold afternoon building the perfect snowman, while his grandma watches from the kitchen window. I say, "Danny?" and he laughs. That same week, I'm pitching a story about him to an editor, about how I found him, found little Kenny Wilcox, the child actor who played Danny on the television show Danny Next Door 1,000,000 years ago. Little Danny, the kid we all grew up with, well, he's a vet now. He lives in a tract house in some suburban development, mows his own lawn. This is him, bald and middle-aged, and a little fat and ignored. This faded star, he's happy and living in a 2-bedroom house. Branching out from each eye, he has laugh lines. He takes pills to control his cholesterol. He's the first to admit, after those years as the center of attention, he's a bit of a loner. But he's happy. What's important is, Dr. Ken has agreed. Sure, he'll do an interview. A little profile for the Sunday entertainment section of the newspaper. The editor I'm pitching to, he twists the end of a ballpoint pen in his ear, digging out wax, looking worse than bored. This editor tells me readers don't want a story about somebody born cute and talented, getting paid a fortune to appear on television, then living happily ever after. No. People don't want a happy ending. People want to read about Rusty Hammer, the little boy on Make Room for Daddy who shot himself. Or Trent Lehman, The cute kid from Nanny and the Professor who hanged himself on a playground fence. Little Anissa Jones who played Buffy on Family Affair, clutching a doll named Mrs. Beasley, then swallowing the biggest overdose of barbiturates in the history of Los Angeles County. This is what people want. The same reason we go to racetracks to watch the cars crash. Our purest joy comes when people we envy get hurt. That most genuine form of joy. The joy you feel when a limousine turns the wrong way down a one-way street. Or when Jay Smith, the little rascal known as Pinky, was found stabbed to death in the desert outside of Las Vegas. It's the kind of joy we felt when Dana Plato, the little girl on Different Strokes, got arrested, posed naked in Playboy, and then took too many sleeping pills. People standing in line at the supermarket, clipping coupons, getting old. Those are the headlines that sell a newspaper. Most people, they want to read about Lanny O'Grady, the pretty daughter on 8 is Enough, found dead in a trailer house with her belly full of Vicodin and Prozac. No crack up, the editor tells me. No story. Happy Kenny Wilcox with his laugh lines, he just wouldn't sell. The editor tells me, find Wilcox with kiddie porn on his computer, find him with dead bodies under his house, well, then you got a story. This editor says, better yet, find him with all of the above, but find him dead. The next week, my dog drinks a puddle of antifreeze. My dog's named Skip after the dog on Danny Next Door, the dog little Danny used to have. My Skip, my baby's white with big black spots and a red collar, just like on television. The only cure for antifreeze is to pump the dog's stomach. Then, fill her tummy with activated charcoal. Find a vein and start the dog on an ethanol drip, pure grain alcohol to flush out the kidneys. To save my dog, my baby, I need her dead drunk. This means another trip to see Dr. Ken, who says, sure, next week is fine for an interview. But he warns me his life's not very exciting. I tell him, trust me, good writing means you take the regular facts and deliver them in a sexy way. Don't worry about your life story, I tell him. That's my job. These days, I could use a good story assignment. Me? I've been writing freelance for a couple years, since I got canned from doing entertainment features. That was good money. The press junket stuff, puffing up quotes from movie launches, sharing a movie star with a table full of media people for 10 minutes, all of them trying not to yawn. Movie premieres, album releases, book launches. It was a steady stream of work, but give the wrong opinion and you're off the gravy train. A movie studio threatens to pull their retail display advertising and abracadabra, your byline disappears. Me, I'm broke, because one time I tried to warn people. One movie, I wrote that people might do better to spend their money somewhere else, and since then, I'm just out of the loop. Just one more slasher movie and the power behind it, and I'm begging to write obituaries, to write photo captions, anything. It's a bald cheat, building a house of cards you don't get to knock down. You spend all those years piling up nothing, creating an illusion, turning a human being into a movie star. Your real payday is at the back end of the deal. Then you get to pull out the rug, knock down the cards, show the handsome ladies' man cramming a gerbil up his ass, reveal the girl next door shoplifting and stoned on painkillers, the goddess beating her kids with a wire hanger. The editor's right. So is Ken Wilcox. His life is an interview that no one will ever buy. For prep, the whole week before we talk, I surf the internet. I download files from the former Soviet Union. Here's a different kind of child star. Russian schoolboys without pubic hair sucking off fat old men. Czech girls still waiting for their first period getting butt-fucked by monkeys. I save all these files to one thin, compact disc. Another night, I clip a leash on Skip and risk a long walk through my neighborhood. Coming back to my apartment, my pockets are stuffed with plastic sandwich bags and little paper envelopes, squares of folded aluminum foil, Percodons, Oxycontins, Vicodins, glass vials of crack and heroin. The interview, I write all 14,000 words before Ken Wilcox even opens his mouth, before we even sit down together. Still, to keep up appearances, I bring my tape recorder. I bring a notepad and pretend to take notes with a couple of dried out pens. I bring a bottle of red wine that was spiked with Vicodin and Prozac. At Ken's little house in the suburbs, you'd expect a glass case crammed with dusty trophies, glossy photos, civic awards, a memorial to his childhood. There's nothing like that. Any money he's got, it's in the bank, drawing interest. His house is just brown rugs and painted walls, striped curtains on each window, a bathroom with pink tile. I pour him red wine and just let him talk. I ask him to pause, then act like I'm getting every quote perfect. And he's right. His life is more boring than a black and white summer rerun. On the other hand, the story I already wrote is great. My version is all about little Kenny's long slide from the spotlight to the autopsy table, how he lost his innocence in a long list of network executives in his campaign to become Danny. To keep the sponsors happy, he was farmed out as a sexual plaything. He took drugs to stay thin, to delay the onset of puberty, to stay up all night shooting scene after scene. No one, not even his friends and family, nobody knew the depths of his drug habit and perverted need for attention. Even after his career collapsed, even becoming a DVM was just to get access to good drugs and sex with small animals. The more wine Ken Wilcox drinks, the more he says his life didn't start until Danny Next Door was canceled. Being little Danny Bright for 8 seasons, that's only real the way your memories of second grade might seem real. Only blurry moments, not connected. Each day, each line of dialogue was just something you learned long enough to pass a test. The pretty farmhouse in Heartland, Iowa, was just a false front. Inside the windows, behind the lace curtains, was bare dirt scattered with cigarette butts. The actor who played Danny's grandma, if they were speaking in the same shot, she used to spray spit. Her spit sterilized, more gin than saliva. Sipping red wine, Ken Wilcox says his life now is so much more important. Healing animals. Saving dogs. With every swallow, his talking breaks up into single words, spread wider and wider apart. Just before his eyes close, he asks me how Skip is doing. My dog, Skip. And I tell him, good, Skip is doing great. And Kenny Wilcox, he says, good, I'm happy to hear it. He's asleep, still smiling, when I slip the gun into his mouth. Happy doesn't do anybody any good. A gun not registered to anybody. My hand in a glove, the gun in his mouth, with his finger wrapped around the trigger. Little Kenny's on his sofa, stripped of his clothes, his dick smeared with cooking grease, and a video of his old show playing on the television. The real clincher is the kiddie porn downloaded to his computer hard drive. The hard copy pictures of kids getting screwed, they're printed and taped to the walls of his bedroom. The bags of painkillers are stashed under his bed. The heroin and crack buried in his sugar canister. Inside of one day, the world will go from loving Kenny Wilcox to hating him. Little Danny next door will go from a childhood icon to a monster. In my version of that last evening, Kenneth Wilcox waved the gun around. He bellowed about how no one cared. The world had used and rejected him. He drank and popped pills all evening and said he wasn't afraid to die. In my version, he died after I'd gone home. That next week, I sold the story. The last interview with a child star loved by millions of people all over the world. An interview done just hours before his neighbor found him dead, the victim of suicide. The week after, I'm nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. A few weeks later, I win. That's only $2,000, but the real payoff is long term. Anymore, not a day goes by when I'm not turning work down, when my agent's fielding offers for me. No, I only do high-profile, big-money work, big magazine cover stories, national audiences. Anymore, my name means quality. My byline means the truth. You look at my address book, and it's all names you know from movie posters, rock stars, best-selling authors. Everything I touch, I turn to famous. I moved from my apartment to a house with a yard for Skip to run around. We have a garden and a swimming pool, a tennis court, cable television. We pay off the $1,000+ we owe for the x-rays and the activated charcoal. Of course, you can still turn on some cable network and see Kenneth Wilcox, the little boy he used to be, whistling and pitching baseballs before he turned into a monster with gin spit on his face. Little Danny and his dog walking barefoot through Heartland, Iowa. His syndicated ghost keeps my story alive. The contrast. People love knowing my truth about that little boy who seems so happy. This week, my dog digs up an onion and eats it. Me, I'm calling vet after vet, trying to find someone who'll save her. At this point, money's no problem. I can pay anything. Me and my dog, we have a great life. We're so happy. It's while I'm still on the phone, flipping through the telephone book, when my Skip, my baby, she stops breathing.